So there's an election going on in the UK. It's taking place on June 8th. Theresa May is the Conservative, and she's the sitting Prime Minister. She's up against Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party and two other candidates. Well, Dominic Raab, another Conservative politician, was defending May at a town hall-like event, and watch what happens.
I don't think if you compare the leadership Theresa May offers, 5 years Home Secretary, calm, vigorous defence of our security, with Jeremy Corbyn, who's had a political lifetime of supporting the IRA. In 2009, in 2009, he described Hamas and Hezbollah members as his friends. Okay. I don't think the guy that wants to cosy up and befriend the terrorists is the right guy to defend us against the terrorists.
Well, you could hear some of the groans in the audience there. Hi.
Hi, my name's Terry and I'm from Luton. I just want to challenge you straight away. Firstly, if it hadn't been for Jeremy Corbyn talking about Northern Ireland, talking with the IRA back in the day, there would be no peace process.
Oh, come on.
He opened the door. And by the way, Margaret Thatcher was doing backdoor deals. Anyway, what really annoys me about you Conservatives and your Tory media, the day after Manchester, it was there. Jeremy Corbyn's got blood on his hands. You want to talk about blood on someone's hands? Theresa May is selling weapons to the Saudis, who are dropping them on kids in Yemen. Now, if Jeremy Corbyn's got blood on his hands, Theresa May's bathing in blood.
Okay.
Oh, goddamn, son. I feel that burn from across the world. He just dropped the people's elbow on your ass. Woo! Wow. Okay, so, he just busted up one of the shittiest arguments I always hear used against liberals and progressives. The idea of, like, terrorist sympathizers. This is the same shit that the neocons, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, said about any liberals, progressives, Democrats who uttered a peep against going into Iraq or doing the so-called war on terror. Like, oh, I guess you're siding with the enemy then. I guess you agree with the enemy. I guess you agree that people could just attack us and then there's no response and everything's fine as a result of that. I guess you're sympathetic to the enemy. No. And the fact that you have to resort to cheap tricks like that in order to try to win the argument shows you actually have no argument. So look at the point that he's making there. He says, Jeremy Corbyn's cozying up to terrorists. Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn is cozying up to terrorists. Why? Because he says that, hey, sometimes some of the attacks against us, in part, are motivated by our wars. So some of it's blowback. And he's saying that because sometimes the terrorists say, hey, this is why I'm doing it. So, and by the way, let me be clear. It's not an either or. It's not like, hey, either they're only motivated by the ideology of radical Islam and they're brainwashed and they believe it, so they're attacking as a result of that. It's kill the infidel. It's in the Holy Book and they're carrying it out. Either that or it's 100% blowback and they're mad about U.S. foreign policy and their aunt was killed in a drone strike. It's not either or. It's usually a mix of both. It's usually, yes, they're Islamic fundamentalists and they're brainwashed into Wahhabism and Salafism, and they really believe it, and they believe they got to kill the infidel and all that. But then the other piece of the puzzle, which really motivates them to actually carry out the action, would be, yes, I'm responding because you destroyed my home country, and I have no hope, and I have no future, and I'm lashing out. So oftentimes the debate people have is one or the other. Like, hey, it's either as a result of radical Islam or it's a result of blowback for U.S. foreign policy. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. Most of the time it's a mix of both. So when Jeremy Corbyn says, okay, come on, guys, let's calm down here. Let's realize that a lot of this is because the West has waged wars in all these different Middle Eastern countries, broken the region. ISIS rose out of that vacuum. And a lot of this is attacking as a result of blowback. And our wars, he gave a speech, Jeremy Corbyn did, and he said, our wars haven't worked. It's just empirically, objectively not working. We've been doing the war on terror, so-called war on terror, since 2001. The U.S. was in Afghanistan in 2001. What do we have to show for it? We have more terrorists now than we did back then. So it is objectively a failure. It's like the drug war. Let's wage a war on drugs. Guess what? The same number of people, if not more, take drugs today and sell drugs today. That is an objective failure. So Jeremy Corbyn points that out, and what do these idiots say on the right? terrorist sympathizer. That's not terrorist sympathies. And then furthermore, they also go after him for his quote about our friends in Hamas and Hezbollah. So what do you think he's saying when he says that, our friends in Hamas and Hezbollah? What do you think he's saying? Is he saying, I agree totally with Hamas and Hezbollah and everything they've ever done and everything they believe? No, that would be a pathetic, ridiculous straw man, and you know that's a straw man. Somebody said, our friends in Hamas and Hezbollah. That's like saying our friends in Cuba, our friends in the Cuban government. You go, whoa, how dare you, Kyle? They're an authoritarian government and they lock up political prisoners, and how dare you defend that? Whoa, I'm not defending that. I'm not defending that. I'm saying usually there's a negotiation going on between two parties, so you're not every time you talk about these groups going to say, I condemn them unequivocally and they're all bad and there's nothing redeeming and we shouldn't even have a conversation with them, because that's how idiots act. And by the way, so Hamas just came out in their new charter and said, okay, this is a political fight with Israel, not a religious fight with the Jews, and we accept the 1967 borders and a two-state solution on that. So Hamas is at the position that the majority of the international community is at, where they say if there is a two-state deal, that's where the borders are going to be drawn. So at least on that front, that is a moderate position. Now, when Jeremy Corbyn says something like our friends in Hamas, is he referring to the ones who say let's kill all the Jews and do a genocide? Or is he referring to the ones who would say let's do a two-state deal on the 67 borders and recognize this as a political fight, not a religious fight? Who's he referring to? The people on the right try to smear him and act like, well, obviously he's sympathetic to genocide of the Jews. That's what. Stop making shitty, hacky arguments. And so the biggest point, though, is Saudi Arabia, because the same characters who would accuse Jeremy Corbyn of being soft on terror, sympathetic to the terrorists. Really? Jeremy Corbyn's sympathetic to terrorists. So when he sees one of these attacks, he sits around and goes, yes, that's what I like. I like it when we get attacked. That's what sympathetic is. Well, I feel sympathy. No, he doesn't fucking feel sympathy for them. He's trying to explain where he thinks it comes from when he talks about blowback and all that stuff. But again, the most important point is Saudi Arabia, because the same people who accuse Jeremy Corbyn of being soft on terror and befriending our enemies, they literally are befriending our enemies and arming them. Arming them. That was a terrible voice crack. Arming. My voice has been cracking a lot lately. It's like lately I'm going through like puberty 2.0, which is weird. But yeah, that's what the real problem is that the British government and the US government, I don't know, let's give billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons to a government that has the same ideology as ISIS, that says, women can't drive. They need an official guardian. They have to cover themselves up from head to toe. We behead people in the public square for drug smuggling and witchcraft and sorcery and apostasy. We say all atheists are terrorists. We have a backwards, fundamentalist, authoritarian, fascist, theocratic regime. The right-wingers, well, to be fair, it's everybody in both governments, the US and Britain, because Obama armed them too, arm these people, and then they accuse guys like Jeremy Corbyn of being sympathetic to terrorists. It's like accusing like Bernie Sanders of being sympathetic to terrorists. Bernie was, what the fuck are you talking, sympathetic to terrorists? What are you talking about? Because I'm trying to explain where I think the terrorism comes from? That's sympathetic to them? Because I think it makes sense to negotiate to try to stop violence? That's why you think I'm sympathetic to terrorists? No, sympathetic to terrorists is when you literally arm them and sit by idly as they arm jihadists in Syria and as they kill kids in Yemen, women and children in Yemen. We're giving them cluster bombs, which are illegal under international law, and they're using them to bomb women and children. They hit open-air markets and mosques and schools and hospitals and schools for the blind. So the same people arming Saudi Arabia and watching them obliterate a country and do a genocide and starve at least 14 million people because they're blockading the country, they turn around and they accuse Jeremy Corbyn of being sympathetic to terrorists when they fucking armed terrorists. So spare me your bullshit. God damn it, I can't take the idiotic attacks from the right. Have a debate on the policies and the ideas, not like fucking little catchphrases like, oh, he said Hamas and Hezbollah are our friends. Obviously, he agrees with everything they've ever done. And by the way, the fucking lumping in of Hezbollah, a lot of idiots like to do this. Let's lump in Hezbollah with fucking Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Hezbollah is fighting ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They are fighting them right now. So when Jeremy Corbyn's like, yeah, our friends in Hamas and Hezbollah, people are like, whoa, how dare you? But the right-wingers right now are arming Al-Qaeda and ISIS through Saudi Arabia and Turkey as a proxy. Where's your anger for that? Oh, Corbyn said some people there might be our friends who we can negotiate with. How preposterous. But, oh, the right-wingers are arming Al-Qaeda and ISIS through a proxy, but I got nothing to say about that, and I have no outrage at that. Corbyn was like fucking 20 points down, 30 points down in the race. Now he's 5 points down. I wonder why.